This is from David Goggins. It's so easy to be great because most of the world is weak. If you are even remotely a savage, you will run these people over. It's all out there for the taking right now. Dana White. Everyone rails against the victim mentality that seems to be sweeping certain areas of the world. I get it. You don't want your town or country or species to go to hell because everyone has forgotten how to take some discomfort or deal with challenges in life. But on another hand, this rampant fragility is your competitive advantage. The bar has never been set lower. A bit of consistency, intentionality, resilience, and a gram of talent will make you into an absolute killer.
So lately I've been having some conversations with both men and women about how the competition in the dating market has never been as weak as it is right now. And I've seen discussions online about this from time to time. And within those discussions, you'll sometimes see comments about how women have a ton of options and the competition is just brutal out here. And it's nearly impossible to stand out as a guy in a woman's sea of options. But in my opinion, this couldn't really be further from the truth. And I actually think that the competition is not only the weakest it's ever been, but it's in a continuous decline due to how things are trending in society overall. And when I say due to how things are trending in society, I'm talking about all the luxuries and the comforts available to us that make declining as a man easier than ever. So for example, if you work a remote job from home, you could probably find a way to never leave your house if you wanted to. In the United States, you could have most things you need just Amazon Prime to your doorstep and Uber Eats every meal if you wanted to. You could literally just be in the house 24 hours a day, watch Netflix, doom scroll social media, and turn into a pile of goo if you really wanted to. There's enough comfort and luxury to where you can avoid doing the things that take effort, and it technically won't immediately impact your survival as a human being. It's not like you're gonna die next week because of it, but it will affect your health and your mental health over time. But it's not like you're going to starve to death and you're in immediate danger. So a lot of the harmful factors of the typical Western lifestyle get ignored until things get really bad. And then guys find themselves in such a bad spot that they don't know how to get out of it. It's interesting to think about it in another way too. Like if you think about it, we have never had more access to information than we do right now, yet the average guy is arguably in a worse position than he's ever been in. And this has nothing to do with the system or the matrix or the government or women or anything else. For a lot of guys, this just comes down to a lack of self-agency and accountability, and also a lack of ambitious drive. So to give you an example of what I mean here, according to the Department of Health in the US, 43% of men are not only overweight, but they're obese. And there's also a projection that the obesity rate will surpass 50% by 2030, and 1 in 4 people will not only be obese, but severely obese. What's insane about this is that if you consider how much fitness and nutrition information is available online and on this platform alone, the resources are literally all around us, yet 1 in every 2 guys in the United States is obese. Now, if you think about this on a larger scale and some of the implications that it has for men in general, and you extrapolate that to other areas, you can start to realize that even basic self-care separates you from a large portion of men. And we haven't even gotten into all the other high value man stuff that gets talked about, like making 6 figures and all that stuff. If you consider that most women on average want to be with a guy that's at a healthy body weight, just by simply being at a healthy weight and not even being jacked or an Instagram fitness model or anything, that alone will put you ahead of half of the population of men right away. Really think about how massive of a separator that really is. You immediately surpass millions of guys just by being at a healthy weight. And that's the only requirement to surpass that many men in that specific department. And all of those other guys will immediately be disqualified if a girl prefers to date someone who isn't overweight. And the thing is that we haven't even gotten into building muscle in the gym, dressing better, making more money, improving your social skills, cultivating a masculine identity that is attractive, and all the other things that you can do. And the thing is that each one of those aspects is like ascending to another tier of separation between you and other guys. So if you're at a healthy weight, you've surpassed millions of men who aren't. But now if you're at a healthy weight and you know how to dress well, you've surpassed all the guys in the healthy weight bracket who can't dress well. And then if you improve your income and your social skills, you've surpassed another segment of the male population that can't communicate well or aren't able to afford much because they don't have a decent income. In theory, these are simple things to improve as well, and there's a difference between easy and simple. I'm not going to act like getting in great shape is easy if you've never done it, or making more money out of thin air is just so easy. But with something like getting in shape, it is simple in terms of the steps that you need to take, in terms of eating better foods, tracking your food, hitting your workouts, and things like that. The steps you need to take to dress better are also simple. You need to educate yourself on better style and then implement the information. The steps to improve your income are also simple. You need to improve your skill set and put yourself out there for more opportunities and continue to sharpen your skills. But it doesn't mean this stuff is just easy per se. It's not like you'll be excited every single day to attack these areas and improve them and the results will just come so easily. Most of the time you're not going to feel like it, but you'll have to do it anyway if you want to better yourself, and you'll face setbacks from time to time that you'll have to push through as well. And that in itself is the great separator between men. The men that are trending down in society are the ones that obey those feelings of not wanting to take action. It's the guys that cannot implement delayed gratification at all. They simply prioritize comfort and complacency over any long-term benefit. It's just all about the here and now and the path of least resistance. It's all about what's easiest today and what will cause the least amount of pain. So again, if you become a man that does the opposite and embraces delayed gratification and the idea that the investments you make today are going to pay off massively over time, you once again separate yourself from a large portion of the male population. It's like if you picture a funnel, and at the top of the funnel at the widest point, you're with the general population of guys in terms of where your attributes rank. But as you improve each area, you continue separating yourself into a class of men that narrows more and more like the shape of the funnel. You continuously elevate into a percentile of men that just aren't like the rest. And the whole idea of getting 1% better every day is a pretty cliche self-improvement platitude, but it rings true in the sense that if you are taking the right steps that other men won't, you are literally separating yourself from the pack by 1% every day. You're leaving behind the 50% of men struggling to even take care of their basic needs and elevating yourself into the top 30, 20, 10, 5, and 1% of men over time. But the other thing with this concept that I hate is the misconception that you have to earn $1 million a month and be 6'5" and look like a Greek god in order to ascend to that top percentile. I mean, if you can do all that, great, you definitely should, but all that isn't even required to stand out from the crowd. It may if you're in the heart of a city like Miami or Dubai and you're aiming for the most beautiful women possible, because those women simply have access to those kinds of men and that's who they typically deal with. But that is such a small percentage of the population that it's basically statistically irrelevant. Most people watching this will never find themselves in a place in life where they're living in Miami trying to date models, nor do you need to. And I really encourage you to ignore a lot of this grandiose, high-value man stuff that gets pushed all the time. I've said it plenty of times before, I'm all for aiming for excellence, but I'm also for being grounded in reality and understanding what is actually required to be a man that women will actually date. And let's talk for a minute about the idea of women having all these options, because this is really important too. If you're in the men's content space, you've probably seen the dating app report that surveyed women and found that women find 80% of men unattractive. And I usually see two responses to this. The first response is some guys will get angry and say that women are too picky and that they're doomed to being an incel. And then the other response is that guys just want to figure out what they need to do to be a part of that 20% of men that are attractive. And these are the guys that are the problem solvers and the action takers. And those are the guys that will be in the top 20%. But what I want to point out about this statistic is that if you see the woman's side of a dating app and you swipe through the profiles, you will quickly see why they find 80% of men unattractive. And I would honestly increase that number and say probably 90% are unattractive. And it's not because they're genetically cursed or unattractive because of things they can't change. It's almost always aspects they can change with their presentation, their communication, and their behavior. And yes, you can partially gauge behavior through a picture on a dating app. There's literally guys on dating apps throwing up gang signs in pictures and thinking that's attractive. It's pretty easy to objectively look at these profiles and point out which guys are attractive to women and those that aren't. And it's also pretty easy to see that most men are unattractive because of their visual presentation and the way they act. I talk to women every single day, whether it's through dating or friends of mine, and since I make content like this and I have a genuine interest in social dynamics, I have conversations frequently about dating and relationships in general. But what I really like is hearing the experience from the woman's side of things to get an idea of what is going on as a whole from both sides. This is one of the advantages to having female friends, by the way. It's almost like a form of research because you see where other guys are messing up and what the average guy is doing that just completely kills his attractiveness. It really gives you an advantage in that sense. And I see the weird DMs that girls get. I see the awful profiles that guys have on dating apps. And I hear about the weird behavior that the average guy throws out there with these women in private. And the truth is that it's easy to blame women for being the problem when you see a lot of these clips on TikTok or YouTube shorts where a woman talks about how she will only date a guy who makes 350 grand a year and will support her like a princess and all this. But that's not the reality for most of these women out here. Most of the attractive women I know aren't dating guys that look like Giga Chad and drive a Lambo and work some high status position. Most of these guys are pretty normal in the sense that they don't earn an outrageous amount of money, and they don't have any notable status or big social media following, and they don't look like a GQ model. But they do separate themselves in more subtle ways that doesn't get talked about as much as all the high value top 1% man stuff does. These guys do earn enough money to be self-sufficient, and they can afford to take a vacation or two per year, but they aren't necessarily driving a Ferrari. These guys do work out and take care of themselves, but they aren't an Instagram fitness model, but they also aren't part of that 43% of men that are obese or the guys that are overweight and don't care about their appearance at all. They dress in a way that makes them look good, but they're not some fashion icon or buying a bunch of expensive designer items. They do just enough in all of these areas to present themselves in a way that is collectively attractive, and it separates them from the men who refuse to better themselves. And that tendency to take action also usually pushes them to approach an attractive woman when other guys won't. And these are the guys that pull these women. I was also talking about this idea of the competition being weak with a friend of mine that I train jiu-jitsu with. And he's in his 40s, and he's been working his career for about 7, 8, 9 years now, I think. And he's at a point where he has an income of around 150K or so. He's making good money to support himself comfortably, and his career is trending upward, but he's not making an amount of money that is going to afford him a high-rise loft in New York City or anything like that. And if that amount of money sounds like way above average to you or crazy, do consider that he's almost worked 10 years in his career and he's in his 40s, so it took time to get there. But even still, it's not like he's one of these guys on social media talking about making $5 million a month or whatever. It's an amount of money that can be achieved by a lot of guys if you stick with a career long enough that has that type of earning potential. And it doesn't always require a degree either. The guy I'm referencing didn't need a degree to get the job that he has. And I also have another friend who works in IT. He just worked his way up the ladder. He didn't get any schooling or any degrees of any kind. And he makes almost $200K a year now as well. So it can be done. But he also works out consistently, and he's in great shape compared to other guys his age or even 10 to 15 years younger than him. And he's also really good socially. He's very good at putting himself out there to talk to new people all the time, and he dates a lot of women because of this. And when we talked about this idea of the competition being weak, he laughed and he said that the average guy puts in such little effort that it's basically shooting fish in a barrel at this point when it comes to dating. He said that the women he dates are often just blown away at the fact that he works out and has his own place, and the fact that he actually has a spine and is masculine. And he's heard the same stories that I have about feminine behavior from guys and just guys not taking care of themselves. And I've physically seen some of the women that he has around, and they act like he's the greatest guy in the world. You can see that genuine desire there because of the traits that he has. But again, these aren't super mind-blowing, ultra elite traits. He's not rich, especially when you consider that he lives in an area with a higher cost of living, and he's not a fitness model, and he isn't 6'5". He's just a guy that does the work that others won't day in and day out. And it's separated himself to the point where the vast majority of guys just can't compete with him. I also recently went out with a girl who was telling me that she was talking with a guy previously that was saying that he wants to be a stay-at-home dad and have the woman be the breadwinner. And he was saying that, and she was saying that was such a huge turnoff for her because, in her words, she likes masculine, manly men, and any signs of feminine behavior is just a huge turnoff for her. And mind you, this was a girl with more traditional values, more feminine energy, and more submissive in her nature. She's attracted to guys that will simply be men and take the lead. She didn't have any outrageous demands of men, at least in what she expressed to me, but simply be a self-sufficient man. But you literally have guys out here talking about being a stay-at-home dad and not wanting to work. And this isn't the only time I've heard this, by the way. I've had other women tell me similar stories in the last few years. And another conversation I had recently was a girl I know who was talking to a guy for a few weeks, and he was really going just all out, full-blown simp mode, buying her gifts, flowers, taking her to nice dinners and all that. This guy probably spent $2 to $3 grand on this girl in the first few weeks of knowing her, and I'm not kidding. And this was a guy with a good job, decent looks, social circle, etc. And he wasn't unattractive on paper, but he apparently got pissed at some point because she put up a story on Instagram at work, and there was a male coworker in the back, and that set him off. So he literally blew up and just blocked her everywhere without saying anything. Now, mind you, they aren't committed at all, and he knew her for about a month or less than a month. And I saw the story myself, and it wasn't anything remotely flirty or attention grabbing. But this guy let his emotions and insecurities get the best of him for whatever reason and just blew up. But then this guy came back about a week later and started sending flowers at her job, apologizing for his behavior and asking her to take him back and all this stuff. It was just pathetic behavior all around, and this guy is in his early 30s acting like this. Another girl I know told me a guy that she met on a dating app showed up on a date with her recently and basically just looked homeless. She said that the guy's beard wasn't trimmed or maintained. trained and he hadn't cut his hair, and he just didn't seem to care much about his appearance at all. He had a sloppy outfit on and everything. It's just basic grooming stuff that this guy could not take care of. But this is where the bar is set, guys. The bar is so low and is continuing to drop so low that it's hard to grasp until you really see it yourself and with your own eyes. Guys act more feminine than ever, and guys do not want to do the work even with basic things. And I've got so many stories to back this point, so when I see guys complain about dating and saying they're doomed, I can assume they're probably similar to the guys in these stories and not doing the basic things correctly, or they're just not trying at all. But the good news is that it leaves the door wide open for the guys that are willing to do what it takes to get themselves to a point that separates themselves from the average mediocrity that makes up the majority of the male population. And if you're one of those guys that just wants to opt out of the dating game completely, then have at it. It's your life. And if the idea of having to separate yourself from other guys makes you angry or it seems unfair, then I don't know what to tell you. It's just basic economics of supply and demand. There's a demand for higher quality guys and the supply just isn't high enough. But there is an abundance of mediocrity and there's a low demand for it. So for the rest of the guys that aren't quitters, you don't have to be elite. You don't have to be a god in these areas. You simply just have to be better than the average and your options will expand. And the standard of the average is way worse than you think. But anyway, check the links in the description and make sure you watch this video next, where I talk about some of the brutal truths that men need to accept in order to live their best lives and to fulfill their potential. And I will see you in the next one.